On June 4, 2010, a young woman walked into a luxury condominium outside Rio de Janeiro. Security cameras captured her entering. She was never seen leaving. Her name was Eliza Samudio, and the man she went to meet that day was one of Brazil's most celebrated soccer goalkeepers. What happened next would shock an entire nation and raise questions that, to this day, remain unanswered. If you appreciate in-depth, respectful investigations into real cases, please like this video and subscribe to Brazil's Crime Vault. It really helps us bring more stories like this to light. This is the case of Bruno Fernandes das Dores de Souza, known simply as Bruno, goalkeeper for Flamengo, one of Brazil's most popular soccer clubs with over 40 million fans. In 2010, he was at the peak of his career. He had just been called up to Brazil's national team, a dream for any Brazilian player. His face was on billboards. Kids wore jerseys with his name. He was making more money in a month than most Brazilians make in years. He had everything to lose. And that's exactly why Eliza Samudio became a threat he couldn't afford. Eliza met Bruno in May 2009 at a party in Rio de Janeiro. She was 25, working as a model and trying to break into acting. Friends described her as ambitious, confident, someone who knew what she wanted. Bruno was already famous, already married, already living a double life. According to people close to Eliza, Bruno pursued her aggressively. He promised her things. He made her believe she was special. They began seeing each other secretly. Bruno would arrange hotel rooms. He'd send cars to pick her up. For a while, Eliza believed she was in a real relationship. She didn't realize she was just another secret Bruno was trying to keep buried. Then Eliza got pregnant. She found out in July 2009, and when she told Bruno, everything changed. According to testimony from her friends, Bruno's first reaction wasn't support or even concern. It was anger. He told her to take care of it. He offered money for an abortion, but Eliza refused. She wanted the baby. And more than that, she wanted Bruno to take responsibility. That decision, according to investigators, signed her death warrant. Bruno tried everything to make the problem go away. He sent intermediaries to pressure her. He offered cash settlements if she'd stay quiet. But Eliza wasn't interested in staying quiet anymore. She hired a lawyer. She was preparing to file a paternity suit. She was going to demand child support, which in Brazil can be substantial for high-earning athletes. But worse than the money, she was threatening to go public. In Brazilian sports culture, image is everything. Sponsors care about family values. Clubs care about reputation. A scandal like this could cost Bruno millions in endorsements. It could cost him his spot on the national team. And Bruno, prosecutors would later argue, decided that eliminating Eliza was easier than dealing with the consequences. In October 2009, something happened that should have changed everything. Eliza went to Bruno's home in Rio. She later told police that she was held there against her will for several days. She said she was beaten. She said multiple people were involved. She said they tried to force her to terminate the pregnancy. On October 24th, Eliza managed to escape. She went directly to a police station and filed a report, what's called a boletim de ocorrência in Brazil, essentially a police report. She gave names. She described what happened. She had visible injuries. The case was registered. It should have been investigated immediately, but it wasn't. Bruno was famous, he had connections, he had lawyers, and somehow the case just sat there. No arrests, no follow-up, just paperwork in a filing cabinet while Eliza tried to move on with her life. Eliza gave birth in February 2010. She was living in São Paulo, pronounced São Paulo, trying to keep a low profile. But she was also running out of money. The baby needed things, she needed support. And Bruno was ignoring her calls. So Eliza made a decision. She was going to force Bruno to face reality. She reached out again. She said she wanted to meet. She said they needed to settle things. And Bruno, at least on the surface, agreed. In late May 2010, Eliza traveled from São Paulo to Rio. She brought her baby, but left the child with a trusted friend. On June 4th, she told people she was meeting Bruno at a property in Vargem Grande, a neighborhood on the outskirts of Rio. She said she'd be back in a few hours. She seemed optimistic. She thought maybe, finally, Bruno was going to do the right thing. She had no idea what was actually waiting for her, Surveillance cameras at the gated community show Eliza arriving around noon. She's alone. She walks through the gate, and then nothing. No footage of her leaving, no phone calls after that point. By that evening, Eliza's mother tried calling her. No answer. She called again the next morning. Nothing. She reached out to the friend who was watching the baby. The friend said Eliza never came back. On June 7th, 3 days after Eliza disappeared, her mother went to the police. She filed a missing persons report, and she told them exactly who Eliza had gone to meet. The case landed on the desk of Detective Edson Moreira of the Polícia Civil, Brazil's state-level investigative police. Moreira had handled dozens of missing persons cases, but this one felt different. The timeline was too clean, the circumstances too suspicious. And when he tried to contact Bruno, the goalkeeper's lawyers immediately intervened. They said their client had nothing to do with Eliza's disappearance. They said he hadn't seen her in months. But Moreira didn't believe them. He started pulling phone records. And what he found was damning. In the days leading up to June 4th, Bruno's phone showed dozens of calls to a man named Luiz Henrique Romão, known as Macarão. Macarão wasn't a soccer player or a business associate. He was a former military police officer who had been dismissed for misconduct. He had a criminal record. He was exactly the kind of person you call when you need something illegal done. Moreira dug deeper. He found that Macarão had traveled from Minas Gerais, pronounced Minas Gerais, to Rio around the time Eliza disappeared. He found that Macarão had rented a vehicle, and he found that Macarão's phone records showed he was at the exact location where Eliza was last seen. On June 24th, Moreira got a break. A witness came forward. The witness said they had seen a woman matching Eliza's description at a rural property in Esmeraldas, a small town about 30 miles outside Belo Horizonte in Minas Gerais. The property belonged to a friend of Bruno's. The witness said the woman seemed distressed. The witness said there were several people there and the situation felt wrong. By the time police got authorization to search the property, it had been almost 3 weeks since Eliza disappeared. When they arrived, they immediately noticed something strange. There was a large burned area in the yard. The ground was scorched. There was an unusual smell. Forensic teams were called in. What they found was horrifying. Soil samples contained traces of human remains, bone fragments, teeth. The biological material had been almost completely destroyed by fire, but there was enough to confirm that someone had been burned there. DNA testing was attempted, but the samples were too degraded. There wasn't enough to make a definitive match to Eliza, but investigators were certain this was where Eliza Samudio had died, and someone had gone to great lengths to make sure her body could never be found. Police arrested Macarão on July 6, 2010. They arrested another man, Marcos Aparecido dos Santos, known as Bola, and they arrested Fernanda Castro, Macarão's girlfriend, who went by the name Diane. Under interrogation, the stories started to come out. Macarão claimed he was just following orders. Bola said he didn't know what was going to happen, but Diane, she told the whole story. She said Eliza was brought to the property in Minas Gerais. She said Eliza was held in a small room. She said Eliza begged for her life. She said she begged for her baby. And she said Bruno had been in contact the entire time, giving instructions by phone. Diane's testimony was graphic but consistent. She described how the crime unfolded. She described who was involved. And she made it clear, this wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated. It was planned. And Bruno was the one who ordered it. On July 8, 2010, Bruno was arrested at Flamengo's training facility. The image of Brazil's national team goalkeeper being led away in handcuffs was broadcast live on national television. The country was in shock. Sports commentators couldn't believe it. Fans didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records showed Bruno had been in constant contact with Macarão. Financial records showed Bruno had paid him significant amounts of money in the weeks before Eliza disappeared. And the testimonies from multiple witnesses all pointed to the same conclusion. Bruno had ordered Eliza's murder. And his associates had carried it out. Bruno's first interview from jail was surreal. He admitted to having an affair with Eliza. He admitted there were arguments about the baby, but he denied everything else. He said he had nothing to do with her disappearance. He said the witnesses were lying. He said he was being framed because he was famous. His lawyers built a defense around the lack of a body. They argued that without definitive proof of death, there was no murder. They argued the confessions were coerced. They argued the forensic evidence was circumstantial, and for months, it seemed like Bruno might actually get away with it. But then the prosecution brought in their key witness. Fernanda Castro, Diane, agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. And when she took the stand in 2013, she didn't hold back. She described everything. She described Eliza's final hours. She described the fear in Eliza's eyes. She described how Eliza pleaded for mercy. And she described how afterward Bruno called to make sure the job was done. The courtroom was silent. Jurors were visibly shaken. Eliza's mother, sitting in the front row, wept openly. This wasn't just a legal proceeding anymore. This was the story of a woman who had been erased because she was inconvenient. The trial lasted several weeks. In Brazil, homicide cases are tried before a tribunal do júri, a jury trial with 7 ordinary citizens. They heard from forensic experts who explained the burn site. They heard from phone company technicians who mapped the call patterns. They heard from Eliza's friends who testified about the October 2009 assault. They heard recordings of Bruno's phone calls where he discussed the problem that needed to be solved. And on March 8, 2013, after hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict: guilty. Bruno was sentenced to 22 years and 3 months in prison for homicide, kidnapping, and concealing a corpse. Macaron got 20 years. Bola got 15 years. Diane, who cooperated, received a reduced sentence. But here's where the story takes another dark turn. In 2017, after serving just 7 years, Bruno was released from prison. A legal technicality related to the appeals process allowed him to go free while higher courts reviewed his case. And almost immediately, Bruno did something that shocked the nation all over again. He signed with a professional soccer club. Boa Esporte, a team in Minas Gerais, announced they were giving him a contract. The backlash was instant. Sponsors pulled out. Fans protested outside the stadium. Women's rights organizations called for boycotts. But Bruno played. He gave interviews where he maintained his innocence. He positioned himself as a victim of a flawed justice system. He never once expressed genuine remorse for Eliza. He never once acknowledged her family's pain. Eliza's mother, Sonia Moura, appeared on television pleading with people to remember her daughter as more than just a headline. She talked about Eliza's dreams. She talked about how Eliza loved to sing. She talked about how Eliza just wanted her child to have a father. And she talked about how the justice system had failed her daughter twice. Once when the October 2009 assault report was ignored, and again when Bruno was allowed to walk free. In 2019, Brazil's Superior Court of Justice reversed Bruno's release. The court ruled that he had been freed improperly and ordered him back to prison. Bruno served additional time, and in 2022 he was released again under a semi-open regime, which allows him to work during the day, but requires him to return to a facility at night. He has attempted multiple comebacks in soccer since then. Each time, public outrage forces clubs to reconsider, but Bruno keeps trying. And that persistence, that refusal to accept accountability, has become its own kind of torture for Eliza's family, and now we come to the mystery that refuses to die. In 2018, 8 years after Eliza disappeared, reports surfaced that sent shockwaves through Brazil. According to leaked information from immigration databases, a passport in the name of Eliza Samudio had been used to enter Portugal in 2012. The passport was allegedly scanned at Lisbon's airport. The entry was logged, and no one could explain it. Was it a clerical error? Was it fraud? Was someone using Eliza's identity? Horan, this is the question that keeps people up at night. Could Eliza still be alive? The theory sounds impossible. We have forensic evidence of human remains. We have multiple confessions. We have a conviction, but we don't have a body. We don't have DNA confirmation. And now we have this passport record. Some investigators believe it was simply identity theft, that someone stole Eliza's documents and used them. But others point out how difficult it is to get through international immigration with a stolen passport, especially post-2010 when security was tightened. Biometric systems, facial recognition, it's not easy to fake. So if it wasn't fraud, what was it? There's a theory, and it's controversial, that Eliza faked her own death, that she orchestrated the entire thing to escape Bruno, to protect her child, to start over somewhere no one would find her. It sounds like a movie plot, but consider this. Eliza knew Bruno wanted her dead. She had already been assaulted once. She knew he had dangerous connections. What if she reached out to someone, maybe in law enforcement, maybe someone else, and arranged to disappear? What if the burned remains were from someone else, or from an animal, something to make it look convincing? What if Diane's testimony was part of the plan, designed to put Bruno away while Eliza escaped? It's far-fetched. Most legal experts dismiss it entirely. But the passport entry is real. It's documented, and no one has been able to definitively explain it. Was it an error in the database? Was it someone using a cloned passport? Or is there a chance, however small, that Eliza Samudio is somewhere out there, living under a different name, watching this case from a distance? What do you think happened? Do you believe the official story? Or is there something more going on here? Let us know in the comments what you think about the passport mystery. What we know for certain is this: Eliza Samudio was a real person. She had dreams, she had a family, she had a child who will grow up without a mother. And whether she's dead or alive, whether the passport was fraud or something else, her story is a painful reminder of what happens when power and violence collide. Bruno's fame allowed him to delay justice. It allowed him to return to the field while Eliza's family still waits for closure. And that imbalance, that injustice, is what makes this case so difficult to forget. Eliza's family continues to speak out. They continue to fight for tougher laws against gender-based violence in Brazil. They continue to demand that Bruno never be allowed to profit from his crimes. And they continue to remember Eliza not as a victim, but as a fighter. Someone who stood up for herself and her child, even when it cost her everything. If this investigation resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to Brazil's Crime Vault. Your support helps us document more cases with care and respect. Share your thoughts in the comments, especially about the passport theory. Thank you for watching.